Hey beauties, welcome back to Surreal Beauty. I'm Tiffany, aspiring mental health clinician, and today I wanted to touch on the topic of childhood trauma and how that impacts us as we transition on to teenage years and adulthood. Have you ever felt like you just don't amount to anything, or that you're just not good enough, or even you find yourself doubting yourself quite often? Chances are you come from a background or a household where you didn't get the love and the support that you needed from the ones that you most loved. If you feel like you resonate with this at all, stay tuned because we're going to dive into this really deep topic. Before we even dive into childhood trauma and the detrimental effects that it has on us as we transition later on in life, let's really talk about self-worth. And what is self-worth? Simply put, self-worth is the belief that we have value, that we deserve love, and that we belong. And people who grow up with a high self-worth, they typically come from households where their parents and loved ones boosted their self-esteem, showed them a lot of love and affection and support through thick and thin. These people, they are the ones that are super confident. You ever find or see someone maybe at your job or even in your friend circle who's just highly confident, just has great energy, regardless of what other people think about them, regardless of the mistakes that they make, they still feel like they have value and that their value is not embedded in other people's opinions, other people's thoughts, whether they mess up or make mistakes or not, right? These are individuals who have high self-worth. Whereas on the contrary, people with low self-worth, they may not have had that type of support and love early on. They may have been ridiculed a lot by their loved ones or parents. And so they grow up thinking that they're only good if they perform well, right? So for example, if a kid kind of grew up in a household where their parents only praised them when they did something good, but ridiculed them or even ignored them when they made mistakes, this can actually have a tumultuous effect on how that child views themselves. And so if the child is only growing up in a realm where they're only being praised when they do good, they learn unconsciously that their worth is only when they're doing something good, when they're doing a good deed, right? Or if they're getting good grades. But if they're getting bad grades, if they're not getting any praise or still getting that same type of love, they instinctually learn that their worth is only embedded in when they just do good things. And just to clarify, right, self-worth isn't conceited, it isn't cockiness, it's just a sure knowing of self that you are great regardless of the mistakes that you make, regardless of what other people say, regardless of the public opinion. You feel as though you're worthy of love. You feel as though you're worthy of belonging, of receiving all it is that you desire, right? So it's about loving yourself and knowing yourself well enough to even set boundaries, to recognize and be self-aware of what is and what isn't within you, and being able to be okay with that, even if you go against the large crowd's opinion, right? So people who are typically high on the self-worth scale, they can be perceived as cocky. You probably know this person, and it's not really cockiness, but it's someone who just has a lot of confidence in themselves. They love themselves, and they just know that regardless of how the day turns out, they are still worthy of love. Even if they've made a mistake, even if they've had a bad day, they still know and they understand that they still belong in this world, that they still have value, and their value isn't based off of the behaviors, whether poor or good, that they make. And that's the difference, right? Whereas cockiness or conceitedness, these are people who have inflamed egos. It's like really big egos, but it doesn't come from a place of pure self-love. It comes from a place of, look at me, look at all these things that I'm doing. Oh, I'm so great. It's based off of the things that they can do, right? Whereas self-worth, it's cultivated in you having that sureness about yourself through thick and thin, regardless if you make mistakes. It doesn't matter if you're doing really good. You could be doing really good or doing really bad. You still feel great about yourself and you still have value. So that's like the difference. So how this ties into childhood. So kind of think back to your childhood and kind of think, were your parents very attentive? Were they attentive to your needs, or were they very avoidant? And so if you think about that, and that's really, it's really critical, because parents who tend to their child's needs, who are very attentive, who show up, they allow their child to learn early on that they matter. That, if let's say the child's crying or the child's upset, having a rough day, and the parent takes the time to listen to the child, to talk to them, to really allow them to express themselves and sort through their feelings, that child feels heard, acknowledged, and seen, and they're going to grow up thinking, I matter, I belong. Whereas on the opposite hand, if you come from a household where your parents were very avoidant, they didn't really take the time to, see like how you're doing. If you can kind of see like, if you're upset or just not having a good day, and your parents don't really take the time to just check in with you, show any type of love or support, they're very just not present emotionally. These children then wake up. They grow up just thinking that they don't matter, right? And I can relate to that a bit. And it's crazy because you may not think something as small as that can have a detrimental effect on how you perceive yourself, but it really does. And so it really starts with where we grew up and the people we grew up around us, whether there be our caregivers, our parents, whoever it was that allowed us, that were in our circles, that raised us, how they showed up for us really allow the child to internalize how much they matter or perceive as such, right? So we're learning about how can we see these things, acknowledge them, and then if you do come from a background that is maybe not the best or most ideal, we can unlearn these ways. Another form of how childhood trauma can definitely be detrimental to our self-worth is if you've experienced a lot of verbal abuse, emotional abuse early on, where have heard your parents or even loved ones say really nasty things, really negative things to you when you were young, we internalize those things and we remember those things. And it's really hard for us to not, let's say, embody and create that as our own story. So if you find yourself, right, as your older self today, as an adult, just thinking really low of yourself, or even having a narrative playing in your mind that probably comes from your childhood. It probably comes from a parent who used to say you weren't good enough, or when you probably did good things and you only got praise for that, you kind of always wanted to repeat that same behavior so you can continue getting that praise. And that kind of manifests into people pleasing, where you're always wanting to please the other person so that you can receive love and affection. So these are a lot of unhealthy ways that as we transition to teenage years, into adult, we can start beginning to want to base our friendships or form relationships with others off of the idea of, well, if I do X, Y, and Z, or if I do this for this person or this man or woman, they're going to love me, they're going to want to be around me, so let me earn and win their love. So how can we debunk this? How can we start to have more self-worth, especially if we come from a household where we didn't, cultivate and develop that early on? My good news is that we are very capable, and it's very possible to learn these things and to get rid of the old narrative. A lot of self-care is one of the ways, right? And self-care is going to look different for everyone. What works for one person will not work for the next. But definitely, I'm open to sharing a lot more of different self-care plans and things like that. If you're interested in wanting to learn how you can do that, definitely drop a comment below or even send me an email. I'd be more than happy to help you on your journey. But also along with self-care, right? Self-acceptance. I talk a little bit about that in my earlier video. Self-acceptance, self-compassion, being kind and genuine to that inner child, right? And as you are the adult that you are today, or maybe teenager, when you find yourself making a mistake, right? When you find yourself failing, because it's going to happen, instead of beating yourself up, loving on yourself and being gentle with yourself, being patient with yourself, having to be kind to yourself, and you're almost parenting that inner child that didn't get that love and compassion early on. Additionally, building your self-worth also looks like setting boundaries. So for my people pleasers out there who love to just say yes to everything, even if it means that you're saying no to yourself, this is going to be a big challenge because it's almost innate for you to just say yes even when you want to say no. So you're having to start to set boundaries, right? Boundaries, whether it be physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, mental boundaries, you name it. Boundaries, you have to set it, right? Boundaries show that you have a lot of respect and love for yourself, and you also teach people how to treat you. So the better you treat yourself, and as other people see that, they will reciprocate that energy, and the ones that don't, you keep it pushing, right? Another one is just genuinely just taking care of yourself, saying nice things to yourself, being able to accept praise and compliments as they come your way. I know sometimes it could be hard when people, they may want to compliment you and you don't want to receive it, but no, it's really important that when you do good things to accept that and to gloat in that. And lastly, don't be afraid to ask for what you need. If you find that you need any type of support in any way, shape, or form from the people in your circle or even at your job, don't be afraid to ask what you need. Closed mouths don't get fed. So if you've learned anything from what I said or any of the things that I stated, I'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments. Definitely drop a comment below. So ultimately, rebuilding self-worth, it is possible. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time and patience. It takes the time to understand where your struggles and your anxiety and your fears and even your worries, where they come from. It's about acknowledging them and then saying to yourself, you know what, you are still worthy of love, or rather, I am still worthy of love. I am still worthy of receiving all it is that my heart desires. I'm worthy for whatever it is that you want. And then taking the time day by day, working towards that and rebuilding your sense of worth, your sense of self, all throughout this process. And that's what I like to touch on. And that's what I circle back on is self-worth, self-love, self-healing, because the more you pour into yourself, the more you show up as a better version of self, the better you are able to show up, in relationships, in your family, with your kids, with your husband or wife, at work, with your friends and everyone around you. It has that trickle effect. And so I'll leave it with this. The way they say when you're about to board a plane or about to take off on a plane, they say that you have to put your mask on before you can help the next person. So ultimately, that's a life lesson, metaphorically, that you can use even in this sense, is that you have to pour into yourself. You have to remove a lot of that toxic energy, a lot of those toxicness that, maybe it didn't come from you originally, but it's still there with you, learning where they come from, why, and forgiving even the people, maybe our parents, right? Forgiving them and moving on. But this all takes time. If you learned something from this video, be sure to share with a friend or two and subscribe. I'm super excited for this new journey that I'm on. And I know I said on my last video, but I'm literally 3 months left of finishing grad school and getting my master's. And so I'll probably make another video on what are the next steps to getting my license, but I'm about halfway there. It's still a process, but I'm super excited. And I love that I'm taking y'all on the journey with me. Again, my name is Tiffany, and I'll see your beauties next time.